Alright everyone out there in Banjo land, Mike Hedding here, coming to you today with just a free banjo lesson. We're going to talk about taking a lick and spicing it up. So maybe creating a beginner level variation, an intermediate level variation, and then finally an advanced level variation. Regardless of what skill level you're at, you're always going to want to practice creating your own licks. So creating your own little spin on a lick is one, it's a great way to help you remember the lick. Two, it's a great way to start to develop your own style. And three, there's no way to get through it other than doing it a lot. So you have, the first lick that you create, your own variation, might not be super interesting. I know mine wasn't, but the more you practice it, the better you get. Pretty soon you'll be able to take a basic lick and create 10 variations on it. So that's what I want you to practice for this lesson. So let's jump into it and start looking at the beginner level lick. Okay, so we're going to play kind of a bluesy D lick to start. And this particular lick isn't special at all. I just chose a D lick, a bluesy D lick, because I thought it would be fun. But you can apply this same concept to any lick you're working on. Okay, so we're going to start up in kind of a D minor shape up here at the 7th fret with our ring finger, our middle finger on the 6th fret of the 2nd string, and our pinky up on the 7th fret. So we have 7, 6, 7 on the top 3 strings. So that's kind of the D minor shape we're thinking of. So when you're playing a bluesy song in D, you can use kind of some of those minor sounding notes as well. You can hear how that has a very bluesy flavor. So we're kind of playing what would technically be a D minor pentatonic. And you don't have to necessarily remember that if you're a beginner, but it is helpful to start breaking down why these licks sound a certain way. And if you can break down and analyze it, oh, that's a pentatonic lick, that's a way you can create your own lick in the future. If you like that sound, okay, let me add a pentatonic scale to this lick, and that's going to give it a certain flavor. So we're using a pentatonic scale, kind of a minor pentatonic in this case. So we're going to start by sliding our ring finger from 5 to 7. And then we're going to kind of roll through that D minor that we were just breaking down. So we have, and then we're going to hit the 5th string, and then go backwards. And then you're going to take your ring finger and your pinky off, and you're going to put your index finger on the 5th fret, and then open. So you have, not too hard, a very basic forward reverse roll, and we're just kind of moving our left hand around very slightly to just modify those notes. Very kind of Scruggs style, which is, I hesitate to say it's more beginner, but it's easier for a beginner to wrap their head around Scruggs style than say melodic style. So that's kind of what we're thinking of here. We're basically rolling through the chord. Except for that last little move where we just take that chord off for a second and put the 5th fret down, which is a C note, which is also in the D minor pentatonic scale. And then we're going to slide basically down here to like a D7, kind of F D7 chord. So D minor and F are closely related. We won't get into that right now, but basically your F, just remember that your F and your D minor are very close. So you can kind of play what would be like an F chord, and it'll work for like a D minor kind of bluesy sound. It's also basically like a D7. And then we just do a little roll at the end. So the lick itself is really 2 measures long, and then measure 3 is just like a fill to kind of help you hear how it resolves, and then so you can loop it. So you have transfer right here, and your fingers basically flip. So use this open 1st string. That's another forward reverse roll in measure 2, so another classic Scruggs roll. We're just using different strings this time. We're still going forward, hitting the thumb, and then going backwards, reverse. So a little faster. Okay, so a couple ways you could use this. You could use this as like a backup lick. So if you had a long section of D or D minor, so kind of either like a bluesy song, you could go just like a backup lick. So the other thing you could do is if you had like a D to G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, you could go. Something like that, so it would lead nicely. So measure 3 of the lick, which is like the fill, would turn into a G instead of a D, so you'd go. So that's just a couple spots you could use this. You could use it to start a solo. It really is just it's like a lick to get you started. It's a fill lick, it's a backup lick. You could use it if you had like 2 measures at the end of a phrase, D, A, something like that. So maybe in a normal song you might have at the end of a phrase you'd have a D, A, and then 2 measures of D, and then it's kind of start over, something like that, right? So you could use it there, D, A, lick, and then you'd be back, something like that. So just practice it. So a couple little variations to keep it in a beginner realm. So one thing I would do is change the right hand very slightly. That's an easy way to create a simple variation without reinventing the wheel. So one thing we could do is instead of doing a forward reverse roll, we could do forward roll. So you could slide into it and then do that same roll again without the slide. And then you could finish it with the 5 open. So you'd have, see, instead of, you'd have something like that. So it's not drastically different, but it's a starting spot to create a variation. So now we created 2 licks out of 1, right? So now we have the forward roll version or the forward reverse roll. Even if we don't modify the second measure at all, we created a variation. You could actually do the same thing with the second part of it too. You could do a forward roll. Something like that. So instead of going forward reverse, you could do 2, 1, open, 2, 1, open, 3, open, like that, right? So that'd be 2 ways to create a little variation, spice it up, and keep it in a beginner realm. The other thing you could do is add a little bend at the end. Just something simple like that. Just adds another level of depth to your playing, a little more attitude, a little more spicy, as they say, right? So I'm just kind of pulling that string down just to give it a little flavor. Okay, so let's look at kind of making it more of an intermediate level lick. So one thing I might do if I wanted to create a more intermediate level version is I would modify the style. So instead of playing more of a Scruggs style version, I might play more of a melodic style version. And the other thing I might do is get a little bit more outside of the scale. So instead of using the minor pentatonic, something like that, we're going to use like the blues scale. So adding that 6th fret, you can hear how bluesy that is. You could also add it here at the 6th fret on the 5th string, which is what we're going to do in case, in this instance, melodic style, right? So we're going to go slide into it, very similar. And then right here, grab the 5th fret with your index finger on the 1st string. Thumb wrap, 6th fret, blue note. Pinky, 7th fret, backwards. So now you have kind of more like a bluesy run. The other thing we're doing is we're taking these 3 notes. So if you played it like single string, so we're grabbing these 3 notes and grabbing them on different strings. You could do that on G up here too. You can really do that anywhere. It's just a bluesy kind of lick. So we roll that way, roll into it. And then right here, take your index finger off, slide down, go into that same shape, and we're just going to do a more advanced roll this time. So that's more like a, kind of like a half backward roll. So it's not really a Scruggs roll, which makes it just a little trickier. So we have So that's kind of like an intermediate level variation. So one thing we did there, like I said, is we used more melodic style. We went outside of the scale a little bit more, which adds a little more tension. Takes a little more confidence to get outside of the scale like that when you're a beginner. It feels a little more scary to play outside of the scale. So that's more of an intermediate thing. And then we're using more of an advanced roll on the second part. And lastly, for advanced, what I think about is mixing the styles and adding more advanced rhythm and getting outside of the scale. So you kind of take everything we were doing for beginner and intermediate, and then the last thing I add to make it more advanced is mixing the styles together. So in this lick, I might do some single string. So this lick, we're kind of doing single string and melodic and partial Scruggs style. So you get, obviously mixing all 3 styles makes it more advanced. Scruggs, single string, and melodic. So this one we're going to start with a single string lick. So we slide from 6 to 7 on the 4th string, which is sliding into that 5th note from the blue note. So I'm doing thumb, index, thumb, index. So 7, 5, 7, 6. And then I'm going to land my pinky up on the 7th fret. So we're basically in that same D minor shape. We just now coming at it from a single string lick versus like a Scruggs roll. And then we're going to do a little triplet lick. So you land on the pinky, take your pinky off, put your index finger down on that 5th fret, and go backwards MIT really quick in a triplet. So you have, and then a little lick. So that's like a melodic lick. 5, 6, open, 1, and then single string. So going through that blue note again. Or you could pull off. So you have, so that's 1 and 2 and 3 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're going. Alright, so hopefully that gives you a couple things to try. Obviously, you're not going to get all this overnight. I don't expect you to. But hopefully, you can use some of these ideas as a basis, a jumping off point. Okay, let me add some single string. Let me go outside of the scale and play a blue note. Sometimes just a little spark of an idea like that is so helpful to force your own creativity. And that's what you kind of have to do at the beginning, is force it. But I found for me, and I always talk about this during my lessons, is put yourself kind of in a box. It's actually going to help you creatively. Whereas if you just say, play anything, it's easy to kind of just freeze up and play nothing. Whereas if you say, okay, I'm going to create a variation to this lick by adding some single string, or I'm going to add the blues scale. By putting yourself in that little box creatively, it's actually going to help you start to be more creative. You'll come up with variations, and then eventually you can break down those doors, and you can really do whatever you want eventually once you start creating your own variations. All of this stuff is subjective. The word beginner, intermediate, advanced is subjective, obviously. But these are some of the ideas when I'm trying to create more intermediate level licks or advanced level licks. These are some of the ideas I think of. All right, hopefully that helps you out. Good luck and keep picking.